You clicked on this video because you want to know how to make your aim better. As I was making this video and I was going through all the points of how to warm up, how to aim train, how to get your raw mechanics up to a high level, I realized a majority of the aiming in this game comes down to you setting yourself up for the correct fights rather than raw mechanics itself. So in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how to train your raw mechanics to get them to a high level, and also think about the game in a conceptual way to be able to set yourself up for easy kills.
Last one standing here, and he will fall to Polo.
So in CS2, the three main mechanics you want to focus on are crosshair placement, peeking mechanics, and raw mechanics. And what are the difference between these three? Crosshair placement is going to be essentially visualization of where you think the other player is going to be. You don't want to play an aim training map that practices crosshair placement and you're just aiming at the same thing, and you're going to be aiming at the same thing every single round you play. Every round is different. The enemy team will be in different spots every single round. Sometimes they'll play the same, but for the most part, every single round is different. And the way I clear mid, if there's a ton of flashes coming over mid, is going to be a lot different than the way I clear mid if there weren't a ton of flashes coming over mid. Let's say my teammates smoked window. Let's say we got a molly down on con, and there's no flashes on mid. I'm going to throw, let's say, a box flash. I'm going to swing out. I'm going to clear the cat angle. I'm going to clear the valley angle, and then I'm crossing to box. But if there's a ton of CT flashes over mid, I'm assuming they're fighting for mid, which means there's probably a couple CTs running up mid valley. So how should I now place my crosshair? I'm going to flash box, probably call for extra flashes from my teammates. And instead of just looking at cat and then looking at valley, off of this flash, I want this flash to blind the cat player, so the cat player has to tuck. What this means is then the valley players will be blind with no cover from their cat player, so I'm swinging out clearing valley rather than looking at cat. My scaling on mid will also look different. I'm not going to scale mid just, looking at cat like this, like they can't be underpass, because if the CTs flash mid a ton, higher likelihood they're playing on mid, so my crosshair placement should now be underpass, then shift to cat. You see how this kind of changes as the rounds go on. If I'm going out A, I don't want my crosshair placement to always be default if I think the CT is playing retake on A. If I think he's playing retake on A, I'm going to peek ticket, I'm going to check this, I'm going to come up, and I'm going to try and fight the jungle guys while the CT player can't see me. There's a lot of different scenarios and a lot of things that factor into this, but you want to get to the point where your crosshair placement is more of a visualization of where you think the other team is, rather than the same routine that you do every single round, not really adjusting off of what you think the other team is doing. Another huge thing that factors into crosshair placement is how you think the other player will be holding or peeking you. So let's say I'm a cat player and I'm holding this angle. This is a very common angle that CTs will play, so I'm expecting any T to come up and hard clear this angle. Whereas if I was playing an off angle like this, I'm expecting the T to come up and peek this, see nothing, and then continue to hard clear the next most common angle. So the way I'm going to hold these angles are a lot different. If I'm playing directly on the angle, I'm holding for the peek from the T. If I'm playing on an off angle, I'm holding for the swing, so I'm going to hold a little bit wider. This goes for a ton of different scenarios. If I'm playing this off angle top connector and I'm holding top con, this T coming out connector will peek this angle first, which means he's probably swinging into me, so I should hold wider. If I'm playing an angle like this, that is extremely common, and obviously the T will peek directly into me, I'm going to hold directly on the angle so I can kill him as quickly as I can, because he's going to be trying to stop as quickly as he can on this angle and kill me. So a large part of holding angles and crosshair placement is visualization of how you think the other player will peek you, and that in itself will improve your aim a lot and get you a lot more frags, because let's think of it like this. If I'm just playing this and I'm holding a tight angle every single round and I'm not expecting the swing, how many times have you guys been in this scenario where you're holding tight on an angle and they swing you and you die? You could have known this if you had thought of this concept before and visualized how the other team will peek you. Now I want to show you an example of Nico entering the B site. This is just a little pug that I found, but he can assume there's a guy towards cat, so he just pre-aims on this guy. That player was opping, right? Peeks into this player. Again, he knows exactly where the player should be. He knows what his pre-aim should be, and this round was as easy as click mouse 1 because his crosshair is already on the other team. So peeking at a base level is pressing the opposite movement key you're using to get onto the angle you're peeking, so that you maximize the amount of time you're accurate and minimize the amount of time you're not. Pro players have become so good at this that when you're holding an angle against a pro player, it essentially feels like they are peeking and holding you rather than actually just peeking you. Because once they peek the angle, they are almost instantly accurate and will almost instantly kill you. I played an FPL against Nico, I played against Monacy, I played against a ton of high-level tier 1 players, and what it feels like when you're holding good angles against these players is the good angles actually turn into bad angles, and it happens a lot where you actually need to hold off angles against these players to maximize the chance that you catch them them off while they're moving, while they're not accurate. And it doesn't matter if you're a pro player. It doesn't matter if you're a noob. If you are moving and you're not accurate, you're not accurate. You can't get an accurate shot off. There's a lot higher percent chance you die. This is why counter strafing and peeking is super, super important, because if you maximize the amount of time you're accurate, you maximize the potential for you to get a frag, whereas if you had been walking or moving otherwise when someone peeked you, then obviously you're not accurate, lower percent chance you get the kill, higher percent chance you die. This is a clip from a game I played last night, and there was an opera posted on me door, but I still ended up getting the kill because I peeked and pre-aimed properly. Let me explain how I did this. So I was back lobby, I heard the CTs nade door, and I knew they had a saved op. Why would the CTs nade door? Nading the door is generally good for the Ts. The only times the CTs are going to nade the door is if they're either going to peek into it or they're going to have an op holding it. So knowing this, I know the common angle in mini, I know that I'm back lobby and peeker's advantage somewhat exists online in CS2. So I pre-aim my crosshair properly. I instantly counter strafe on the angle I think he's going to be on. I visualize where he is, and it is as easy as clicking mouse 1. At face value, this peek looks insane. If I was the opper on the other team, I would be freaking out at how I just got peeked. But the goal in this game is not to have crazy mechanics and flick everywhere and make it look insane. You want the kills to be as easy as they can, because consistently that is how you are going to get a lot of frags. Percentage-wise, if you have to flick to every kill you're going to get, that's going to be a lot more inconsistent than just putting your crosshair on them before you already peek and obviously just clicking mouse 1. But let's say I think there's a player right here holding me palace. I'm going to go ahead and start the map. So I'm going to come out here and I'm going to come around the corner and be perfectly ready for him because I know the angle he's on. So this peek might have looked crazy from his perspective, but if I think that he's here, my crosshair's in the right area, and I'm able to stop perfectly when I think he's on the angle, I will be able to kill him and it will look extremely quick. Same thing goes for other angles. So if I come here and I think there's going to be a player stair, I'm going to peek this and I'm going to one tap that stair guy because I know that he's going to be there. I can stop perfectly on the angle, and it's as easy as clicking mouse 1 if you have good crosshair placement. Peeking is essentially just tying your movement into your aim, mushing the two together, and then if you have good crosshair placement, you have good peeking, you have good aim. So counter strafing is pretty much pressing the opposite movement key so that you slow down and get accurate as quickly as you can, because in this game you have to be standing still to shoot accurately. So this is a warm-up server that I'm using right now just to go ahead and practice my aim before I go live on my stream. But basically what it is it's a great way of practicing your strafing and your aiming all in one on the maps that you're going to be playing against real players. I'll go ahead and link some deathmatch servers down below. People usually use either prac or warm-up server. I prefer warm-up server. I've just always used them. But this is a great way to practice your strafing, practice your aiming, and practice everything that you really need to do to have good mechanics in this game, aside from visualization and obviously all the factors that will come into playing an actual match with nades, smokes, 5 players on the other team, etc, etc. What this also means is when you're deathmatching, you should try and practice something if you're going to be aim training that you want to improve on your game. So let's say I want to practice spraying. All of my kills are going to be spraying. I'm not going to tap any of my kills. I'm just going to go ahead and peek all the normal angles and just try and maintain good spray control. I could also do this for tapping. Let's say I just want to work on my tapping. I'm going to come over here. Obviously, I'm going to just try tapping. I'm terrible right now. That's awful. But yeah, this ties into aim training, because aim training is where you're trying to practice one mechanic of the game and just get really good at it. Sometimes that can be 2-bullet bursts. I did an aim video earlier where I talked about how pro players, go into deathmatch and they practice different things. And one of the things you want to keep in mind is that sometimes you're practicing 2-bullet bursts or practicing a certain mechanic of the game, you're going to look like a absolute bot. And I said this in my last video as well about aim, because if you're trying to get better at something, obviously you're going to look like a bot when you're trying to practice it and you're not good at it. Think of going to the gym. People who go to the gym are not, they don't start out buff. No one started out being able to bench 405. It took them being terrible at benching, which it is what it is, to eventually get to the point where they can bench 405, right? Same thing goes for your aim. If you deathmatch and you've never deathmatched before, you're going to be absolutely terrible, but that is exactly what you need to improve your aim. That is a huge, huge part of getting better. No one starts really good. You can have great mechanics. They could translate from other games, but in CS, that's how it's going to be. CS aiming mechanics are a bit more complicated than other games like COD, and even sometimes people say Valorant is a bit easier for aiming rather than compared to CS. But yeah, deathmatching is absolutely huge, and you can see I'm ranked 33rd in this server because I have played probably around 2,000 deathmatch kills so far this month. But yeah, this is how you get better. This is a large part of getting better. Deathmatch a ton, and the results will come. I also want to mention that sometimes pros don't even really deathmatch too much, and they mainly stick to workshop mats. So like aimbots, there's the CS stats practice map that they use. But yeah, so you don't have to deathmatch. You don't have to deathmatch, but everyone needs to have some sort of aim routine or aim training or warm-up routine to be consistent in the game, right? If you start every CS session by doing the same kind of warm-up, maybe a little bit of aim training as well, trying to improve on a mechanic, you're going to get better over time, and then you can switch to a new mechanic. You can switch to a new warm-up method, and it's just going to make sure that you're consistent in your games, you have consistent results, and you won't really be hopping on and being like, wow, I'm terrible today, because your warm-up is going to be the same at all times. Yes, some players have good days. Yes, some players have bad days, but being able to have a consistent warm-up method will try and minimize that factor. The next thing I want to talk about is knowing your job and how you can factor that into actually getting more kills, because a lot of players will play this game and die and say, wow, my aim was just bad, but they're putting themselves in bad positions where they're setting themselves up for bad fights, which will in turn make your aim feel bad because you're out of position, you have to hit a hard shot, and then after you die, if you say, oh wow, I just had bad aim there, and you don't actually recognize you were out of position or you made a bad play, you're going to keep putting yourself in bad spots where you feel like your aim is bad, but trust me, it's not the problem. So in this clip, there's a flash over upper B, and this doesn't always indicate that it's going to be a B rush. That's why I just say there's a flash over B. Once they smoke my molly, I realize that it's probably a B rush, so I say, hey, looks like a B rush. I fall back, and I make a plan. I smoke the middle of sight. I try and isolate a fight in the windows, which I get. I try and search for the bench guy before the guy who's flashing comes up apartments. I don't find him by the time I cross a default pillar, but I know that the next apartments guy is coming up, and I'm trying to isolate 1v1s. Sure enough, he sees me, he tries to spam me. I check for the bench player while he's occupied. Once I don't see the bench player, I hold for the apps player. He goes ahead and peeks me. I take my other 1v1 on the bench player, and notice how easy this sight hold looks. They did a 5-man B rush, but I was able to isolate 1v1s to the point where it just broke down into 1v1, 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 and if you think you're better than the other players, you think you have better aim, this is exactly what you're looking for. You want to isolate 1v1s. Do you think it's going to be a higher percentage for me to sit on site and try and fight all players at once, or try and isolate them into little bite-sized 1v1s and then chain together a larger sight hold? This is what I'm talking about, where knowing your job factors into having good aim, because if you know your job, you know what angles you need to hold, you know what angles you need to do, and you know how to isolate 1v1s on a site execute, or let's say you're fighting mid, you can try and isolate angles to get 1v1s. A lot of playing this game is trying to isolate 1v1s, because if you're fighting 3 players at once, a 1v3 is going to be a lot lower percentage of winning, rather than multiple 3 individual 1v1s. This is a clip of me anchoring B-site Dust 2 with Brax, and this also ties into knowing your job. So what he's doing is he's saying he's going to hold door, and I'm going to hold tons, and on his contact, when the T's come through door, I will peek. Now, I get 3 kills here. This was not because I have crazy aim. This is not because I flicked amazingly and all this stuff. We knew our jobs, we knew what we needed to do, and we executed it properly. Ideally, this is how you want to play the game. It's high percentages, it doesn't require crazy aim, it just requires good thinking, and this is the knowledge part that factors into aim. This is the knowledge part that factors into tier 1 players staying tier 1 players. They are not tier 1 players because their aim is crazy. Yes, that is a factor. They are tier 1 players because they know how to use their aim. I can guarantee you there are plenty of players in ECL or tier 3 that have very close, if not better aim than half of tier 1. But if you know how to use it properly, you're going to always beat that player that doesn't.
Yeah, Polo 13-2 though. I mean, that is a ridiculous KDR 6.5.
I enjoy making videos like this because it helps you improve your game without having to do any work. I'm just giving you the concepts and the mental models for you to use in your own game and improve yourself. At a pro level, absolutely everything is thought out. So I'm trying to make you, as a non-pro player, aware of the most important things you need to put thought into when it comes to aiming. Improving mechanics is pretty straightforward. You just need to know what you have to work on and put in the work. But the actual conceptual things that go into aiming are things that you need to think out, and that's what I'm trying to give to you.
JS Feltner manages to isolate Steel, but Grape waiting on the B side greets Dylan with the M4 bullets.
Thank you guys for watching. If you found this video helpful at all, go ahead and check out my coaching. I'll go ahead and link it below on Metafy. I do coaching on stream as well if you want to check out my Twitch, but thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.